Commander Tak stood on the bridge of the Voran flagship, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the gleaming metal floor. The main view screen showed the planet Terrace, its once blue atmosphere now clouded with smoke and debris. Another conquest for the mighty Voran hegemony. The planetary defense grid has been neutralized, Commander, Officer Nari reported, her scaled fingers dancing across the control panel. Local military resistance has ceased. Civilian populations are surrendering across all major population centers. Tak's four eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of satisfaction among his kind. The Voran hegemony had followed the same efficient pattern for centuries. Identify, isolate, conquer, extract. This marked their 73rd planetary acquisition in the past 50 years alone. Another victory for the archives, Tak said, mandibles clicking as he spoke. The High Council will be pleased. This system contains unusually rich mineral deposits. The bridge crew worked in silent efficiency around him. They were the elite of the Voran military, the best tacticians, strategists, and warriors the hegemony had produced. Each had participated in dozens of conquests, and none had ever tasted defeat. The natives barely resisted, Nari observed, reviewing the battle statistics on her screen. Their technology was at least 3 centuries behind our own. They attempted to deploy nuclear weapons against our shield arrays. A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Primitive nuclear technology was no match for Voran defensive systems. They never do resist effectively, Tak replied with the confidence of an undefeated conqueror. Begin resource extraction immediately. I want mining operations established within 48 hours. The biological assessment teams should identify suitable labor populations for processing. Yes, Commander. Nari transmitted the orders to the invasion fleet. Outside the viewport, thousands of Voran ships moved into position around the conquered world. Some were already landing on the surface, disgorging troops and equipment. The methodical dismantling of another civilization had begun. What species were they again? Tak asked, already losing interest in the defeated enemy. The Teresi, Commander. Vital, oxygen-breathing, carbon-based. Average lifespan of 80 years. Early spacefaring capability but limited to their own system. Ah yes, unremarkable, like most of them. Tak turned away from the viewport. Have their cultural and scientific data been extracted from their information networks? Yes, Commander, though there is little of value. Their mathematics was particularly primitive. This was the true purpose of the Voran conquests, not merely territory or resources, but knowledge. The hegemony believed that all knowledge in the galaxy rightfully belonged to them. They collected and cataloged the science, art, and history of every species they encountered, then reduced the conquered populations to servitude. Prepare my report to the High Council, Tak ordered. I will be in my quarters. Alert me when the extraction operations begin in earnest. As you command. As the commander left the bridge, he did not notice the small alert blinking on one of the secondary monitoring stations, a minor anomaly. A small energy signature briefly detected leaving the system at high speed. The junior officer monitoring the station dismissed it as sensor ghost and cleared the alert. Dr. Huan worked frantically in the cramped research vessel's cockpit. The ship was never designed for interstellar travel, yet here she was, pushing its engines far beyond safe limits. Behind her, the Voran blockade of her homeworld grew more distant with each passing moment. Navigation systems failing. The ship's basic AI reported in a flat tone. Power reserves at 34% and declining. Current course cannot be maintained. Juan wiped sweat from her forehead with a trembling hand. The Voran attack had come without warning. One day, Terrace had been a peaceful world preparing to test its first interstellar drive. The next, the sky had filled with alien warships. As the planet's leading xenobiologist, Juan had been in her orbital laboratory when the invasion began. She had watched in horror as the Voran methodically destroyed Terrace's defenses. When the call for unconditional surrender went out, she made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Bypass safety protocols, she told the ship's eye, ignoring its warnings. Divert all non-essential power to the experimental drive. The small vessel shuddered as its engines reconfigured. Dr. Juan had been part of the research team developing Terrace's first faster-than-light drive. The prototype installed on this research vessel was untested and dangerous, but it was also her people's only hope. In the final moments before the Vorin takeover, Juan had downloaded the entirety of the Teresi Defense Ministry's intelligence files. Among them was a curious report, intercepted communications mentioning a species called humans from a planet called Earth. What made these communications remarkable was that they came from a sector of space the Vorin had declared empty after preliminary surveys centuries ago. If this Earth existed, if these humans were real, perhaps they might help. Or at least, perhaps they could be warned before the Vorin found them too. Drive activation sequence initiated, the AI announced. Warning: structural integrity compromised. Probability of successful transit, 37%. Juan closed her eyes. Proceed. The experimental drive engaged with a terrible screech of protesting metal. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines, then vanished entirely as the ship entered hyperspace. The journey that should have taken years would now take weeks, if the ship held together. As the vessel stabilized in hyperspace, Juan turned to the data she had stolen. She had to understand everything about the Vorin, their weaknesses, their tactics, their technology. The files contained detailed analysis of previous Vorin conquests, patterns identified over centuries of observation. Computer, compile all data on Vorin tactical weaknesses, she instructed. Processing. Limited tactical weaknesses identified. The AI responded after several minutes. Vorin fleet configurations optimized for engagement with technologically inferior opponents. No significant military defeats recorded in available history. Juan frowned. What about technological blind spots? Sensory limitations. Vorin sensor technology focuses on standard energy signatures. Possible gap in detection capabilities for quantum state phenomena and certain radiation wavelengths. This was something. If Earth was real, if humans possessed technology the Vorin hadn't encountered before, perhaps they might stand a chance. It was a slim hope, but hope nonetheless. As the ship hurtled through hyperspace toward coordinates derived from the intercepted communications, Dr. Juan began preparing her warning. She compiled everything she knew about the Vorin, their biology, technology, social structure, and conquest patterns. She included the desperate pleas of her people, the destruction of her world, and the fate that awaited all species that fell to the hegemony. Days turned into weeks. The ship's systems failed one by one. Life support cycled down to minimal levels. Juan survived on emergency rations and recycled water, growing weaker as her journey continued. Approaching destination coordinates, the AI finally announced. Hyperspace exit imminent. Power reserves critical. Juan dragged herself back to the control console. The ship shuddered violently as it returned to normal space. Through the viewport, she saw a yellow star surrounded by planets. The third one, blue and white, looked remarkably like her lost home. "Is this Earth?" she whispered. Before the AI could respond, proximity alarms blared. A massive object had appeared on sensors, a vessel larger than anything in the Teresi fleet. It moved with surprising speed for its size, approaching her small craft. Unknown vessel detected, the AI reported. Configuration does not match Vorin design parameters. Juan felt a mixture of terror and hope. Had she found the humans, or had she led the Vorin to another innocent world? With the last of her strength, she activated the emergency broadcast system. Her message went out in all frequencies, containing everything she had learned about the Vorin threat. To the people of Earth, she began, "I come with a warning." The TSS Valiant hung in the shadow of Jupiter, its sleek hull reflecting the gas giant's swirling clouds. Unlike the bulky military vessels of previous generations, the Valiant resembled a predatory fish, streamlined, elegant, and deadly. It was humanity's first true interstellar warship, though it had never engaged in actual combat. Captain Ju stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, as she watched the crew run through system checks. At 38, she was younger than most would expect for such a command, but her tactical brilliance during the Mars conflict had marked her for rapid advancement. Final diagnostic on the quantum drive complete, Captain, reported Chief Engineer Da. All systems nominal. Jumu nodded. The quantum drive was humanity's greatest technological achievement, a propulsion system that could fold space-time rather than merely traveling through it. This was the Valiant's third test flight, taking the ship progressively farther from Earth to ensure the revolutionary technology functioned as designed. Begin preparations for return jump to Earth orbit, Ju ordered. I want all departments to submit their reports before. Captain. Lieutenant Song interrupted from the sensor station, his voice tight with urgency. Unknown vessel approaching at high velocity. The bridge fell silent. Humanity had explored much of the solar system, but had never encountered evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence until now. Configuration. Ju asked calmly, though her heart raced. Nothing in our database, ma'am. It's not one of ours. Song manipulated the holographic display, bringing the image into focus. Small vessel, approximately 20 meters in length, showing signs of significant damage. Current trajectory will bring it near our position in 6 minutes. Juwu's mind raced through protocols established for this very scenario. Humanity's first contact with an alien species. Those protocols, however, had never anticipated that contact would occur near Jupiter rather than in distant space or on Earth itself. Alert Earth Command, she ordered. Transmission priority Alpha. Battle stations. Lieutenant Jin, bring defensive systems online but take no aggressive action. I want weapons charged but safed. The bridge erupted into controlled activity. Warning lights pulsed as crew members moved with practiced efficiency. The Valiant might be on a test mission, but its crew had been selected from the best military personnel Earth had to offer. Incoming transmission from the vessel. Communications Officer Park announced. It's a mathematical sequence. Prime numbers, followed by what appears to be a universal gravitational constant. A peaceful contact signal. Ju said, recognizing the theoretical first contact protocol developed by Earth's xenolinguists. Respond with the next sequence in the pattern. Then transmit our first contact package. The bridge view screen shifted to show the approaching vessel. It was clearly not built for aesthetics, a utilitarian craft with odd protrusions and what appeared to be hastily repaired hull breaches. It moved erratically, as if its navigation systems were failing. Captain, the vessel is broadcasting a wideband message, Park reported. Our AI is attempting to decode it. It appears to include mathematical formulas and simple pictograms. The AI suggests it might be an attempt at basic translation. Let's help them along, Ju said. Transmit our linguistic database. If they have translation technology, that should give them what they need. Minutes passed in tense silence as the alien craft drew closer. The Valiant sensors provided increasingly detailed scans, revealing a power signature unlike anything in human engineering. Neither fusion nor antimatter, but something else entirely. Captain, we're receiving a response, Park said suddenly. Audio and visual. The alien craft is requesting permission to dock. Their systems are failing. Ju hesitated only briefly. Prepare docking bay 2. Security teams in full containment gear, medical staff on standby. I'll meet our visitor personally. 20 minutes later, Ju stood in the docking bay as the alien craft made a rough landing, its engines sputtering before dying completely. A team of armed security personnel flanked her, weapons lowered but ready. The craft's airlock cycled open with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. A figure stumbled out, humanoid but clearly alien. It had gray-blue skin, 4 arms, and large eyes set in a face that reminded Ju of Earth's amphibians. The alien was clearly injured, one of its arms hanging limp at its side. "I am Dr. Juan," the alien said through what must have been a translation device at its throat. The words were accented but understandable. "I come, seeking help. Warning." Ju stepped forward, keeping her hands visible in the universal gesture of peace. "I am Captain Ju of the Earth vessel Valiant. You're injured. We can help you." The medical team approached cautiously. The alien, Dr. Juan, did not resist as they scanned her. The translation device had used feminine pronouns and applied emergency treatment to her wounds. "My ship," Juan said weakly. "Data cores. Must. Preserve." Ju nodded to Engineer Da, who led a team into the alien craft to secure the requested data. Hours later, after Dr. Juan had been stabilized in the medical bay, Ju sat across from the alien scientist. A holographic display between them showed images of a beautiful world with sweeping oceans and spiral cities. Terrace, Juan's homeworld. "The Voran came without warning," Juan explained, her translator now functioning more smoothly after interfacing with the ship's computers. "Our defenses lasted less than a day. They have conquered 17 known civilizations across what you would call the Orion arm of the galaxy." The holographic display shifted to show images of a massive alien fleet, vessels that dwarfed even the Valiant. Their design was angular and predatory, bristling with weapons. "The Voran hegemony has expanded for centuries," Juan continued. "They take what they want: resources, knowledge, slave labor. My world will be the 18th civilization to fall under their control." "How did you escape?" Ju asked. "I was on an orbital research station when the attack began. This vessel had our prototype faster than light drive. I took our defense ministry's data and fled." Juan's large eyes blinked slowly. "I came here because we intercepted communications mentioning Earth. Your world has somehow remained hidden from foreign detection. Ju processed this information with growing alarm, and you believe they'll find us eventually." "It is inevitable," Juan said simply. "They systematically explore each sector of space. It is only a matter of time." The security officer cleared his throat. "Captain, how do we know this isn't some kind of trick? An advanced scout for an invasion." Juan's translator conveyed a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. "If the Voran wanted your world, they would not send a warning. They would send a fleet." She gestured to the data cores Engineer Da had retrieved from her ship. "Everything I say can be verified. My ship's sensors recorded the fall of Terrace." Ju studied the alien carefully. Her instincts, honed through years of command, told her Juan was telling the truth. The fear in those large eyes was genuine. "Our world has never faced an external threat," Ju said carefully, "but we've spent most of our history fighting amongst ourselves. We understand warfare." "The Voran don't," Juan replied. "They've never needed to. Their technological advantage has always been overwhelming. They'd grown complacent. That may be their weakness." Ju's eyes narrowed as determination settled over her. "Then they've never encountered humans before." She stood, decision made. "Dr. Juan, I'm taking you to Earth. Our leaders need to hear what you have to say." She turned to her communications officer. "Contact Earth Command. Tell them we're coming home with a visitor, and the situation is urgent." As the Valiant prepared for its return journey, Ju stood alone in her quarters, contemplating what lay ahead. If what Juan said was true, humanity faced its greatest challenge. Yet strangely, she felt a fierce pride rising within her. Throughout human history, their greatest advances had come in response to threats. "Not if we have anything to say about it," she whispered to herself, echoing the words she had spoken on the bridge. It wasn't just bravado. The Valiant might be just one ship, but it represented what humans did best: adapt, innovate, and overcome impossible odds. The Voran hegemony had never faced humans before. Perhaps that would be their undoing. Captain Ju stood before the United Earth Defense Council, her uniform crisp despite having barely slept in the 3 days since returning to Earth with Dr. Juan. On the large display behind her, Images of the Voran fleet orbiting the conquered world of Terrace played in a silent loop. "So you're telling us," General Park said, his weathered face grim, "that this alien armada could arrive in our system at any time?" "Yes, sir," Ju replied. "Dr. Huan believes we have months at most before their systematic exploration brings them to our sector. The only reason they haven't found us yet is that our system happens to fall between their standard search patterns." The 12 members of the council exchanged troubled glances. They represented Earth's most powerful nations, brought together by the common threat. Dr. Huan stood beside Ju, still weakened from her journey but determined to help. Her translator conveyed her words clearly. The Voran do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender except as a prelude to total domination. 17 civilizations have tried different approaches. All have failed. President Choi, who headed the council, leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest, Captain Ju?" "Earth's combined fleet consists of only 23 vessels capable of space combat, and only the Valiant has your new quantum drive technology." Ju had anticipated this question. "We strike first, Madam President. Not with our fleet, but with the Valiant alone." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. "One ship against an empire?" Admiral Wu asked incredulously. "That's suicide." "Not necessarily," Ju countered. She nodded to her chief engineer, who activated his own presentation. Engineer Kim stepped forward. He was young for his position, only 32, but his brilliance had earned him the role of lead designer on the Valiant's revolutionary propulsion and defensive systems. "The Voran have never seen anything like our ship," Kim explained, displaying technical schematics of the Valiant. "Our quantum drive doesn't just move through space. It temporarily exists in multiple spatial locations simultaneously. Their sensors, based on Dr. Huan's data, are designed to track conventional propulsion signatures." Kim switched to a display of the ship's defensive systems. "Additionally, our adaptive shield geometry can reconfigure itself to counter specific energy frequencies. The Voran use standardized weapons across their fleet. Once we identify those frequencies, our shields will become increasingly effective against them." President Choi frowned. "That gives your ship survivability, perhaps, but not offensive capability against hundreds of enemy vessels." This was where Ju took over again. "With respect, Madam President, humanity has something the Voran don't. Thousands of years of experience fighting enemies with comparable technology." She displayed historical battle maps side by side with Voran fleet formations. "The Voran rely on overwhelming force and superior technology. Their tactics are predictable, even primitive, because they've never needed sophistication. They attack in rigid formations. They don't adapt mid-battle. They've never faced an adversary who could challenge them." Dr. Huan nodded in agreement. "This is true. My analysis of their battle records shows consistent patterns across centuries. They have not innovated tactically because they have not needed to." Ju continued with growing conviction. "But humans have fought each other throughout our history, constantly developing new strategies against equal opponents. We understand asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations. Our real advantage isn't just technology, it's human ingenuity." The room fell silent as the council considered her words. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" General Park finally asked. "A surgical strike at a Voran fleet currently establishing control over Dr. Huan's home system. The Valiant can arrive undetected using the quantum drive. We won't try to defeat their fleet. We'll target their command structure, create chaos, and demonstrate that they're vulnerable." "To what end?" someone asked. "To buy us time," Ju answered simply. "Time to prepare Earth's defenses, time to build more ships with our technology, and most importantly, to send a message to the subjugated worlds that resistance is possible. Dr. Huan has provided data on resistance movements still operating on conquered planets. If we can inspire them to coordinate their efforts." President Choi studied Ju for a long moment. "You realize what you're asking. to take our most advanced vessel into enemy territory on what amounts to a symbolic mission. Not symbolic, Madam President. Strategic. Ju stood straighter. Throughout history, empires that appeared invincible have fallen once their aura of invincibility was broken. The Vorin have never known defeat. Let's introduce them to the concept. The council deliberated for hours. Military advisors argued against risking their most advanced ship. Scientists wanted more time to study Dr. Wan's technology. Diplomats suggested attempting communication with the Vorin, despite Wan's warnings. In the end, the reality of their situation proved decisive. Earth could not win a conventional war against the hegemony. Their only advantage was surprise and innovation. 3 days later, Captain Ju addressed the crew of the Valiant in the ship's main hangar bay. Additional weaponry had been installed, and the ship's systems upgraded based on Dr. Wan's data about Vorin technology. Our mission has changed, Ju told the assembled crew. We're no longer a test vessel. Starting today, we are humanity's first line of defense. She outlined their mission objectives, not hiding the dangers they would face. I won't order anyone to come on this mission, she concluded. It's volunteer only. Those who wish to remain on Earth will be reassigned with no mark on your record. Not a single crew member requested reassignment. Later, in the ship's briefing room, Ju met with her senior officers to finalize their battle plan. The holographic display showed their target, the Vorin command vessel currently orbiting Terrace. Their fleet structure is hierarchical, Lieutenant Song explained, highlighting key vessels in the enemy formation. Take out the command ship, and the rest will be temporarily disoriented. They're not accustomed to independent action. Engineer Kim added, we've modified our torpedoes based on Dr. Wan's data. They should penetrate Vorin shields more effectively now. We've also improved our stealth systems to mask our quantum signature. Dr. Wan, who had insisted on joining the mission, studied the display with her large eyes. The Vorin will not expect an attack. In their experience, inferior species only ever retreat or surrender. Then we'll show them something new, Ju said, determination in her voice. She turned to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Jin, what's your assessment? Jin, a veteran of Earth's conflicts, pointed to several positions around the Vorin fleet. They leave these sectors minimally defended, assuming no one would attack from these vectors. Their sensor grid has gaps here, here, and here. If we make multiple short quantum jumps between these points, we can approach their command ship before they detect us. And once they do detect us, Ju asked. Then we implement what I call the Hornet Protocol, Jin said with a tight smile. We don't try to outfight them. We sting, move, sting again. Their ships are powerful, but slow to maneuver. We use our superior agility to hit vulnerable points, then jump away before they can coordinate a response. The plan was bold, some would say reckless, one ship against hundreds, but as Ju reminded them, the Vorin have conquered through fear as much as force. When the supposedly invincible are wounded, fear works in reverse. As the meeting concluded, Engineer Kim lingered behind. Captain, there's something else you should know. He hesitated. I've been analyzing Dr. Wan's propulsion technology. If we modify our quantum drive in a certain way, we could potentially create a localized spatial disruption that would disable Vorin ships within a limited radius. Would this damage the Valiant? Ju asked. Kim nodded reluctantly. It would burn out our drive coils. We'd be stranded, at least temporarily. A last resort then, Ju decided. Make the modifications, but mark it as Emergency Protocol Omega. Not to be used unless all other options are exhausted. As launch preparations continued, Ju stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at Earth, blue, beautiful, and still blissfully unaware of the danger it faced. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. If they failed, this might be the last time any human saw Earth peacefully rotating in space. Captain. Dr. Huan had entered quietly behind her. Doctor, Ju acknowledged. Are you sure you want to come with us? We could arrange for you to remain here." The alien scientist moved to stand beside her, gazing at Earth. "My world looked similar. I have nowhere else to go, and I believe I can help." Jiwoo nodded in understanding. "Then welcome aboard, officially." As they watched Earth together, a human and an alien united by common cause, Jiwoo felt her determination harden into resolve. The Vorin had never faced humans before. They were about to learn what that meant. The Valiant hung in the darkness at the edge of the Terrace system, its systems powered down to minimal levels. Through the main view screen, Captain Jiwoo and her crew could see the distant sun and its orbiting planets. Around the third planet, Dr. Hwan's homeworld, hundreds of Vorin ships moved in precise formations. Passive scans complete, Tactical Officer Lee reported in a hushed voice, though there was no need for quiet in space. "I count 327 Vorin vessels. Their command ship is in high orbit over the northern continent." Jiwoo studied the tactical display, where the enemy fleet appeared as a swarm of red markers. Dr. Hwan stood beside her, four-fingered hands trembling slightly as she looked upon her conquered world for the first time since her escape. "Their resource extraction is already well underway," Hwan said, her translator conveying the sorrow in her voice. "Those bright spots on the surface are mining operations." Engineer Kim checked his instruments. "Quantum drive functioning normally. Stealth systems at maximum efficiency. They haven't detected us." Jiwoo took a deep breath. The moment of decision had arrived. They had traveled faster than any human vessel before, crossing hundreds of light years in a series of quantum jumps. Now they faced the full might of the Vorin hegemony with just one ship. "All hands, battle stations," she ordered, her voice calm and steady. "Arm quantum torpedoes. Shield geometry configured to pattern alpha." Throughout the ship, crew members moved with practiced efficiency. In the weeks since they'd left Earth, they had drilled continuously, preparing for this moment. Each person knew their role in the daring plan they called Operation Thunderclap. "Are we really doing this?" Lieutenant Song whispered to Jin at the navigation console, one ship against their entire fleet. Jin's eyes remained focused on his controls. "We're not trying to destroy their fleet. We're sending a message." Jiwoo overheard their exchange and addressed the bridge crew. "Remember your training. The Vorin have never faced an opponent with our capabilities. Their tactics are rigid and predictable. We hit their command structure, create confusion, and demonstrate their vulnerability." She paused. "Begin Operation Thunderclap." The Valiant's engines hummed to life. Instead of conventional propulsion, the quantum drive created a field that allowed the ship to partially exist in multiple locations simultaneously, a technology the Vorin had never encountered. Initiating first jump, Jin announced. Target coordinates locked. The stars blurred, and suddenly the Valiant was elsewhere, behind a large moon orbiting the gas giant at the edge of the system. From here, they could approach along a vector the Vorin weren't monitoring. Second jump in 3, 2, 1. Again the ship shifted position, appearing briefly near an asteroid field before vanishing again. Through a series of 5 rapid jumps, the Valiant approached the heart of the Vorin fleet without triggering their detection grid. Final approach, Jin reported tensely. "We'll emerge 5,000 kilometers from the Vorin command ship." "Weapons ready," Lee confirmed. Targeting systems locked on their command vessel's propulsion and communication arrays. Jiwoo stood, her posture straight and determined. "Execute final jump. Weapons free immediately upon arrival." The quantum drive engaged one last time. The Valiant materialized exactly where planned, directly behind the massive Vorin flagship. Before the alien vessel could react, the human ship fired its first salvo, 6 quantum torpedoes that phased in and out of normal space as they traveled, making them nearly impossible to track. On the bridge of the Vorin command ship, Commander Tak was reviewing extraction quotas when alarms suddenly blared. "Impact imminent," his sensor officer shouted. "Unknown projectiles approaching from." The ship shuddered violently as the torpedoes struck with perfect precision. The first two disabled the flagship's main communication array, cutting it off from the rest of the fleet. The next pair destroyed its primary propulsion systems, leaving it drifting. The final two torpedoes targeted the vessel's weapon control centers. Tak gripped his command chair, mandibles clicking in agitation. "What is happening?" "Report." "Unknown vessel detected," Officer Nari called out, her scaled fingers racing across her console. "Configuration unknown. Size, it's tiny, Commander. Barely the size of a scout ship. Impossible." Tak roared. "No such vessel could penetrate our formations." But the sensor display confirmed it. A small ship was executing maneuvers unlike anything the Vorin had ever witnessed, appearing and disappearing from their sensors as if by magic. Aboard the Valiant, Ju watched as confusion spread through the Vorin fleet. Without direction from their flagship, the alien vessels began to break formation, some moving to protect the command ship, while others turned to locate the attacker. Phase 2, Ju ordered. Target their secondary command vessels. The Valiant jumped again, reappearing near a cluster of Vorin cruisers. More torpedoes launched, each finding its mark with devastating accuracy. With each successful strike, the Vorin fleet's coordinated response deteriorated further. "They're trying to adapt," Lee reported, watching the enemy movements. "But they're confused. Their formations are breaking down." "They've never had to fight without central command," Dr. Huan explained. "Their hierarchy doesn't allow for independent action." The Valiant continued its hit-and-run attacks, never staying in one place long enough for the Vorin to lock their weapons. Jump after jump, strike after strike, the human vessel systematically disabled the command structure of the alien fleet. On his crippled flagship, Commander Tak watched in growing horror as his perfect military machine fell into disarray. "Track that vessel," he screamed at his officers. "Predict its movements." "We can't, Commander," Nari admitted. "It doesn't move like anything we've encountered. It seems to teleport between locations." "That's not possible," Tak insisted, even as the evidence played out before him on the tactical display. "No species we've conquered has such technology." "Sir," another officer reported hesitantly, "the vessel is broadcasting a message. It's being transmitted across all frequencies." "Put it through," Tak ordered. A human face appeared on the main screen. Captain Ju, her expression resolute and unafraid. "Attention Vorin hegemony," she stated clearly. "I am Captain Ju of the Earth vessel Valiant. Your era of unopposed conquest is over. We have studied your tactics, your technology, and your weaknesses. What you are witnessing is just one ship from our world. We offer you this opportunity. Withdraw from this system immediately, or face the consequences of continued aggression." Tak stared at the alien face in disbelief. No species had ever dared to make demands of the hegemony. Before he could formulate a response, another impact rocked his vessel. "Lower hull breached," an officer called out. "Primary power failing." "Target their reactor core," Ju ordered on the Valiant. "Prepare for emergency jump on my mark." The Valiant fired its remaining torpedoes directly at the Vorin flagship's heart, its antimatter reactor. As the weapons struck home, the massive alien vessel began to break apart, secondary explosions cascading along its length. "Jump now," Ju commanded. The Valiant vanished just as the Vorin flagship detonated in a blinding flash that temporarily overwhelmed all sensors in the system. When the light faded, the pride of the Vorin fleet was gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of debris. The effect on the remaining Vorin ships was immediate and unprecedented. Without central command, without precedent for this situation, the fleet fell into complete disarray. Some vessels began firing on shadows. Others attempted to retreat to defensive positions. None maintained the perfect formation that had been the hallmark of Vorin military dominance. The Valiant reappeared at a safe distance, its crew watching in amazement as the seemingly invincible armada disintegrated into chaos. "It worked," Engineer Kim said in awe. "They don't know how to respond." Dr. Huan moved closer to the view screen, her large eyes reflecting the distant explosions. For the first time in recorded history, the Voran hegemony has been dealt a defeat. Juwu wasn't celebrating yet. Broadcast our message again, on all frequencies and in all languages from Dr. Huan's database. Make sure every subjugated world in this system can hear it. As the Valiant's message spread across the system, something remarkable began to happen. On the surface of Terrace, resistance fighters who had gone into hiding emerged, attacking Voran ground forces that suddenly found themselves without orbital support or direction. "We're receiving transmissions from the surface," Communications Officer Park reported excitedly. "Multiple resistance groups are coordinating attacks on Voran positions." Dr. Huan moved quickly to the communication station, helping to translate the messages from her people. "They're asking who we are, where we came from." "Tell them," Juwu said simply. "Tell them Earth stands with them." As the message spread, the crew of the Valiant witnessed the beginning of what would later be known throughout the galaxy as the Battle of Eridu, the first successful resistance against the Voran hegemony, sparked by a single human warship that dared to challenge an empire. The Grand Assembly Hall of the United Earth Council buzzed with energy. Every seat was filled, with additional spectators standing along the walls. Officials from nations around the world, military personnel, scientists, and media representatives had gathered to hear the report from the crew of the Valiant. 6 weeks had passed since the vessels returned from Terrace, and rumors had spread across Earth like wildfire. Captain Juwu entered the hall, accompanied by her senior officers and Dr. Huan. The alien scientist still drew curious glances, but now those looks contained respect rather than suspicion. The assembly rose to their feet in a spontaneous standing ovation that lasted nearly 2 minutes. When silence finally returned, President Choi spoke from the central podium. "Captain Juwu, on behalf of all humanity, we welcome you and your crew home. We have reviewed your preliminary reports, but today we ask you to share with us, and with the watching world, what transpired in the Taurus system." Juwu stepped forward, her uniform adorned with a new insignia, a stylized lightning bolt, the symbol of Operation Thunderclap. The holoscreen behind her activated, showing images captured during their mission. "Madam President, distinguished council members, citizens of Earth," she began, her voice strong and clear. "What I report today will forever change humanity's place in the galaxy." The images shifted to show the Voran Armada as the Valiant had first observed it. Hundreds of warships surrounding the besieged world of Terrace. The Voran hegemony had never known defeat, Juwu continued. For centuries, they conquered world after world, assuming their technological superiority made them invincible. She paused. They were wrong. The holoscreen now displayed footage of the Valiant's attack, the precision strikes, the confusion of the Voran fleet, and finally the destruction of Commander Tak's flagship. The assembly watched in stunned silence. "Our mission objectives were achieved beyond our expectations," Juwu explained. "The Voran fleet at Terrace has withdrawn to their core territories. The resistance movements on 7 subjugated worlds have coordinated their efforts and liberated major population centers. The myth of Voran invincibility is broken." An admiral raised his hand. "Captain, impressive as this victory was, surely the hegemony will regroup. They still possess vastly superior numbers." "Yes, Admiral, they do," Juwu acknowledged. "But numbers alone do not win wars. The Voran are regrouping, but their image of invincibility is shattered. Their rigid military hierarchy has proven vulnerable to asymmetric tactics. Most importantly, they're afraid." Dr. Huan stepped forward at Juwu's gesture. The alien scientist had become more comfortable addressing human audiences over the past weeks. "My contacts among the resistance have confirmed significant changes in Voran behavior," Huan said, her translator rendering her words clearly. "Their fleets have adopted defensive postures. They've recalled ships from frontier regions to protect core worlds. For the first time in recorded history, the Voran High Command has requested diplomatic communication. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly. They wish to talk, President Choi asked incredulously. They wish to understand, Ju clarified. They cannot comprehend how a single ship defeated their fleet. They assumed technological superiority was their birthright. Now they face an opponent with technology they don't understand, using tactics they cannot predict. The holoscreen shifted again, showing a recording of a transmission received 3 days earlier. A Voran official, older than Tak, with more elaborate markings on his scaled skin, spoke directly to camera. People of Earth, the alien said stiffly, the Voran hegemony acknowledges your unexpected capabilities. We propose an exchange of representatives to prevent further misunderstandings. Ju paused the recording. This is Supreme Commander Relak, the highest authority in their military hierarchy. Translation: they're requesting peace talks because they fear what else we might be capable of. A scientist stood up. Captain, how did the Valiant perform during combat? Did our technologies function as designed? Engineer Kim stepped forward to answer. The quantum drive exceeded expectations, allowing us to execute jumps with precision that confused Voran targeting systems. Our adaptive shields successfully reconfigured to counter their weapons after initial exposure. He smiled slightly. Put simply, our one ship outmaneuvered their 300. Lieutenant Jin, the tactical officer, added, the Voran have superior firepower, but inferior tactical flexibility. They never needed to innovate in battle. When their command structure was disrupted, they had no protocols for independent action. As the briefing continued, screens around the world showed similar scenes. Humanity was coming to terms with its new reality. They were not alone in the universe, and they had already made a powerful impression on galactic politics. In cities across Earth, celebrations erupted spontaneously. The crew of the Valiant became instant heroes, their faces appearing on screens everywhere. But alongside the celebrations, preparation continued. New ships based on the Valiant's design were already under construction in orbital shipyards. After the formal briefing concluded, Ju found herself in a smaller meeting room with President Choi and the core leadership of the Defense Council. What happens next? General Park asked bluntly. We've bloodied their nose, but they still command an empire. Ju laid out a data tablet showing intelligence gathered during their mission. We've established communication with resistance movements on all 17 conquered worlds. They're coordinating their efforts now, inspired by what the Valiant accomplished. And the diplomatic overture? President Choi asked. I believe it's genuine, Dr. Hwan answered. The Voran cannot comprehend defeat. It has created a fundamental crisis in their society. Some factions will want revenge, but others fear what would happen if they provoked Earth further. So we negotiate from strength, the president concluded. Yes, Ju agreed, but we should understand something fundamental has changed in the galaxy. The resistance leaders are calling it the Valiant Effect. Species that have been subjugated for generations suddenly believe freedom is possible. Later that evening, Ju stood on the observation deck of the orbital station, where the Valiant was docked for repairs and upgrades. Earth rotated slowly below, beautiful and peaceful. Dr. Hwan joined her, the alien's movements now familiar and almost graceful in the station's artificial gravity. Your world is preparing, Hwan observed, noting the increased activity around the orbital shipyards. We've had a saying throughout our history, Ju replied. If you want peace, prepare for war. We hope for diplomatic resolution, but we'll be ready if the Voran choose conflict. The Voran underestimated humans, Hwan said thoughtfully. They assumed technological superiority determined the outcome of conflicts. They never understood that innovation often comes from necessity. Their mistake, Ju said with a small smile, was giving us time to prepare. As they spoke, communication relays throughout the solar system carried stories of the Valiant's victory to the growing resistance movements on conquered worlds. Coded transmissions, smuggled recordings, and whispered legends spread among the subjugated peoples of the hegemony. The story grew with each telling. How a single ship from a previously unknown world had shattered the undefeated Voran fleet. On occupied planets, resistance fighters took heart. If one ship could do such damage, what might be possible with coordinated action? 6 months later, Captain Juwu stood on the bridge of the Valiant once more. The ship had been refitted, its systems enhanced based on lessons learned during their first engagement. Through the view screen, she could see 4 more vessels of similar design, the first products of Earth's new defense initiative. Captain, Communications Officer Park called out, "Incoming transmission from Terrace. Priority channel." The message was brief but momentous. The Teresi resistance, coordinating with fighters on 2 neighboring systems, had liberated their capital city. Voran forces were in retreat across multiple fronts. As humanity prepared to take its rightful place among the stars, the legend of the Valiant continued to spread. The species that had been invisible to the hegemony sensors had become impossible to ignore. Humanity had announced its arrival with a thunderclap that would echo for generations. In the conference rooms of the Voran High Command, strategic planners struggled to understand their new adversary. They studied recordings of the Battle of Eridu obsessively, trying to comprehend how their perfect formations had been defeated by a single vessel. "These humans," an elder strategist observed, "they fight unlike any species we've encountered. They do not follow predictable patterns. They improvise. They take risks no logical species would consider." Supreme Commander Relak stared at the holographic representation of the Valiant. "Then we must learn to think as they do," he said grimly, "or we must make peace." As diplomatic missions prepared to depart both Earth and the Voran homeworld, the message that had begun with a single ship reverberated throughout the galaxy. "Underestimate humans at your peril."